I understand everybody's pumped. Everybody's excited about what's next on Oregon's schedule. But we got to take one final look back at that 42-13 Friday night win over Minnesota and hand out some holy Wallowa awards. Plus, the one big thing the Ducks need to emphasize in this upcoming matchup against USC. That show out west takes on a little bit of a different meaning this week, doesn't it? Let's get it started.
This place has everything. In fact, the grass is damn green in Eugene.
That performance deserves a holy Wallowa.
It's a feeling you cannot explain.
This place is louder than any other venue in the Big Ten.
This program is staged to compete and to win championships.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon.
And welcome to That Show Out West for That Team Out West. I'm Ted LaRue. Man, this is going to be a fun week, man. This is going to be a fun week. This is what we've all been waiting for, everybody. West Coast rivalries to finish the regular season for this Oregon football team. Is it Saturday yet? Boy, if you logged on Twitter on Sunday like I did, I was coming out from doing some yard work. I came in and I opened up what the artist formerly known as the Twitter Bird, and I'm scrolling through this thing, and I'm like, are we sure it's not Wednesday? Are we sure it's not Thursday morning? The level of trash talk that there already was between Duck fans and Trojan fans, I'm excited for what this week has to come. I don't engage in online trash talk myself, but I've already got my popcorn. I'm sitting back and I am enjoying every single second of this, and I'm going to enjoy every single second of this before an absolute Goliath of a football game on Saturday between the Oregon Ducks and the USC Trojans. As I stated just a few moments ago, shorter program today, just a couple of segments, because we are very much backloaded this week towards later in the week on the content that's going to be coming your way here on TSOW. Going to be bringing back the scouting report. What makes this USC Trojans program tick? We're going to look at the offense. We're going to look at the defense. We're going to look at the special teams. We're going to look at the coaching before I get into my preview and prediction. Could be Wednesday night. Could be Thursday as well, so make sure you stay tuned and be locked into the socials and on YouTube so you know when that show is coming. Updated uniform power rankings. It sounds like it's going to be some black uniforms, although it's not going to be a night game, but maybe we'll dive a little bit more into that whole conundrum later in the week as well. We've got some updated Rivals 300 rankings that dropped, including a Duck commit at wide receiver that is now a 5-star, and we know recruiting is kind of like a big crux of where this USC-Oregon battle kind of is right now, because these are two of the top recruiting programs in the country with what USC did earlier in the spring, earlier in the summer, and then once you get to midsummer and late summer, Oregon did Oregon things like they do every single year. Now, these are two of the top 5 classes in the 2026 cycle across the entire country. And you know Dan is going to be reaching into that bag of tricks. He is maybe the best recruiting closer in all of college football. You know he is going to try to bring as many big-time prospects into this game inside the walls of Autzen Stadium as humanly possible. So that's just yet another thing to track going into this week that's going to be really interesting. Is it Saturday yet? Whew, I can't wait for this matchup. All right, one last look at Friday night's matchup. It is time to hand out some hardware. It is time to dive into our Holy Wallowa Awards. We begin with our honorable mentions, and the engine just keeps on humming, doesn't it? And the engine right now that propels this Oregon Ducks football team, more specifically this Oregon Ducks offense, is the run game. Noah Whittington and Jordan Davison. That is as good of a 1-2 tandem as you will find running the football right now in the entire country. Now, the offensive line, of course, has a lot to do with this as well. I mean, that interior combination of Iapane Lalaulu and Emmanuel Pregnon has just been dynamite. It has been dynamite, and the rest of the offensive line is really starting to hit their stride. But these backs right now, they are taking advantage. They are hitting the hole. They are creating explosive plays with what the offensive line is providing to them. Whittington, 8 carries, 72 yards, and a touchdown in this game against Minnesota. That's 9 yards per carry, including that Beastquake. That almost wasn't a Beastquake touchdown. You got to hold on to the ball, young man. He's not the young man. He's the dad. He's the dad in this running back room. But that's the thing about Noah. He's very difficult to bring down, coming off of an injury. In the middle of the season, he's really gotten better. It seems like each and every single week, and it appears like he's hitting his stride, maybe playing some of the best football that he's played in an Oregon Duck uniform right now. And then Jordan Davison. Jordan Davison, you are the love of my life right now, man. You are freaking amazing. 7 carries, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's 8.1 yards per carry. Let's talk about Agent Zero for a moment, why don't we? I tweeted it the other day, and I'm like, okay, at Ted on the Ducks, yeah, this Twitter account is becoming a Jordan Davison Stans account because, man, he is so freaking good. Here's what I want to talk about with Jordan. Look, at a guy his frame, at a guy his size, and I've talked about this throughout the season, it's like, once he builds up momentum, once he gets past the line of scrimmage, he gets into that second level, he's driving that Corvette down the hill. It's insanely difficult to stop. He's got his frame, the plus 230 pounds and how much muscle is packed onto that frame. Right, it's like that V8 underneath the hood. You ain't stopping it. The only one stopping it maybe is the driver himself. But you kind of look at, you have that, and then you add on to his insane vision, number one, combined with his one cut change of direction. The change of direction and the cutting ability was on display. I mean, that 39-yard touchdown run that he had, unbelievable. I mean, his job, like for both these freshman running backs, both him and Hill are very patient for their age. A lot of young running backs, they just want to go. Let me go. Let me get into the end zone right now. But you've got to wait for your blocks. And when on that 39-yard touchdown run, you can see him. Mentally, I think he was multiple steps ahead. Before he got to the line of scrimmage, he knew what he had to do to be able to set things up, find that crease, and then once he gets into the open field, putting his foot in the ground against one of the best safeties in the game back there in Coy Parrish and making him look like he's on skates, making him look like Coy's back on a rink in Esco, Minnesota, and just turning his hips around, and then Jordan finishes the run into the end zone. There was a catch that he had out of the backfield. He could kind of see out of the corner of his eye that there were 2 Minnesota defenders approaching and be like, I need to be able to put my foot in the ground, keep my acceleration, go to the inside, and just run around these Minnesota defenders. That's exactly what he did. I mean, that should have really been a 3-yard play, a 4-yard play, but Davison's acceleration off of that change of direction made it a 10-plus yard play. And that's the thing you get from Jordan Davison right now. You get plays that maybe should be a yard or 2 yards, and they turn into 4 yards or 5 yards. He gets the most available yards out of every single touch. His lean, his everything. I could talk about Jordan Davison for hours, but we got to move on and talk about the rest of some of these good performers that were on the field on Friday night. Let's talk about Jamari Johnson a little bit. 4 catches, 57 yards. Now, you even go back to the game before, the week before against Iowa, and then, of course, this game against Minnesota. There were injuries aplenty at the wide receiver position, so you were going to see a lot more from the tight ends. That shouldn't really be much of a surprise. Will Stein put out a ton of 12 personnel on Friday night. Kenyon Sadiq was healthy, and then you had Johnson here that I'm talking about. 8 catches the last 2 games. Prior to that, He had 9 catches in 7 games this season. And he's really starting to kind of form into a little bit of a weapon. He's been a really good blocker, which should not be surprising considering his frame right now. But he just does a really good job at finding the open spots in the defense. And to be honest with you, he's kind of a little bit of the forgotten man. Not the forgotten man in the Oregon, within the Oregon coaching staff, certainly. But he's kind of the forgotten man in terms of how defenses prepare and how defenses scheme against this Oregon team right now. Because you had Sadiq out there, you had Malik Benson on the other side, you have this run game, you have everything that you have to prepare for. And then, when you get DeCorian Moore back, you get Evan Stewart maybe back a little bit later on. He's going to be maybe even more the forgotten man when defenses are game planning against the Ducks right now. But he's just there. He's a really smart player in the pass game, in the receiving game. And, once he, kind of like Jordan Davison, once he gets kind of a full head of steam, catch and run down the field, he's also very difficult to be able to bring down. Let's go to the defensive side of the football right now. All right. So usually when I hand out these honorable mentions, it's guys that are playing 20 snaps, 30 snaps, 40 snaps, that are playing a good amount. I'm handing out an honorable mention to a guy who played 4 snaps on Friday night, because every single time Nasir Wyatt takes the field and he puts reps on tape, there's only one thing you can say. Holy Wallowa, that kid is freaking fast. That kid has explosiveness coming off the edge. He is, that rush where he dipped his shoulder and just zoomed right around the tackle. He hasn't gotten a ton of reps this season because there's a lot of really good players at that position. Tatum, Mateo, Ashton Porter, Blake Burgess, who we'll talk about here in just a minute. But man, I would love to see him play more snaps. You get in the opposing offense into a 3rd and 5, into a 3rd and 6. Let this dude pin his ears back, because his quickness is gonna create a problem for opposing pass protections right now. So I mentioned just the 4 snaps, 2 tackles. He had a pressure / a hit, an 80 PFF pass rush grade. You look at coming into Oregon, he was somewhere like 205, 210 coming out of high school. And I think the big thing was like, okay, Nasir's got to come in. He's got to put on some weight. He's super fast, super explosive, and you're seeing that this season. You've seen it a little bit earlier. We've seen flashes of Wyatt and his pass rush ability and his explosiveness coming off the edge. Hell, Robert Griffin III compared him to Von Miller in this game, but he needed to kind of put a little bit more onto his frame. He put about, I think, like 10 or 15 pounds over the spring and the summer coming into the fall, and now you're starting to see his body kind of come into what it needs to be right now. Now, if he can really keep up that trajectory in what he's able to do, adding muscle to his frame, and you keep that speed and explosiveness that is absolutely elite right now, you're not only going to see a lot of Nasir Wyatt next season, you're going to see a lot of Nasir Wyatt this season. Give me more of that. He is the most explosive pass rusher, I believe, on this Oregon team. He is the quickest, the fastest guy that they have. Give me more of 32, baby. Give me more. Let's talk about Blake Purchase. A lot of rotation. I noticed it on the interior of the defensive line. Also at that edge outside linebacker position. Blake Purchase, 4 tackles, 2 solo tackles. He was a part of that heavy rotation. We've seen more of Blake in the second half of the season. And I think we've seen more depth also at this position. A little bit more of a rotation, keeping guys fresh while also kind of providing different skill sets coming off the edge. And I think Blake provides that. I want to throw an honorable mention out to Brandon Finney. Look, I know he allowed a bigger catch to start. He had a penalty and all of that, but he was being attacked a lot by Minnesota, and I think he responded well as this game went on. He was targeted 5 times, just 2 catches. Once he was kind of able to correct things early on, Minnesota realized what a lot of teams realized. It's not the easiest thing in the world when you throw in the direction of somebody like Brandon Finney. And then Dylan Thieneman. Thieneman is really playing some really good football as of late. He's like that. He's that third linebacker, I like to say, in their base set. 4 tackles, a PBU, and he's at really high PFF tackle grades, when the play gets into his vicinity, more often than not, he's going to make the tackle. So I think Dillon has been playing much better football as of late. All right, let's go to the two big performers, primetime performers from this primetime game on Friday night against Minnesota. First, we've got QB1. We've got Dante Moore putting efficient in efficiency, 27 of 30, 306 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was classic. Just take what the defense gives you. You didn't have your big playmaker over the top in Decorian Moore. You didn't have that threat coming out of the slot in Gary Bryant Jr. This was, and I think Minnesota played against maybe some deep plays down the field. This was very much going to be, all right, take that 5-yard play, take that 7-yard play, take that 10-yard play, work the middle of the field. I thought Dante, combined, of course, with the play calling of Will Stein, did a tremendous job in working play action. When Dante when Oregon, I should probably say first, when Oregon was able to run the ball very effectively, and then you work off play action where Dante's on the run a little bit, he was able to find his targets. Now, one of them, he kind of had a murder ball a little bit, throwing it to Malik Benson over there, and he got hit really hard. But there were some tight ends as well where he kind of put the ball just right on. I love that throw late in the game to Roger Salapaga on the sideline. That was an absolute dime back there. So, Dante was really good, really confident once again in this game. And, of course, he deserves a holy Wallowa for barely putting the ball on the ground in this matchup. And then we got to talk about Kenyon Sadiq. I think he's been kind of dealing with a lingering injuries maybe throughout this season. He finally looked fully healthy. I think that week off where he was held out of the game against Iowa, I think paid dividends for him to really allow himself to work him back into shape where he can be full go and he can be 100%. I've said it before. When you don't have some of those other wide receivers on the outside, Kenyon Sadiq was going to be the top target. 8 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Probably should have been 2 touchdowns if Dante puts a little bit more air under that first diving grab. If you're watching on YouTube, you kind of see it here in on the graphic of that diving effort that he was able to make near the goal line. But he was all over the field. I mean, you got him on the one touchdown that he did have. He's lined up in the slot against Maverick Baranowski. He's lined up in the slot against the linebacker. I'm like, what? Just don't run the play. Just put 6 points on the board. He's going to win that battle. And you saw it coming right off the line of scrimmage, that shuffle, put your foot in the ground, and then just win the explosive race to the back pylon is exactly what Kenyon was able to do. I mean, we've been talking about it ever since the summer. I mean, he just presents so many matchup problems. You saw him matched up, like I said, against a linebacker. You saw him matched up against corners. You saw him matched up against safeties. You saw him matched up against a variety of people. And he won most of those battles. So let's just put it that way. More Kenyon Sadiq. Feed the ball to Kenyon. I think they kind of force-fed it to him because of the injuries in this game. But even with maybe Decorian coming back, Evan Stewart coming back, Gary Bryant Jr. coming back, would still like to see a lot more of this connection from Dante Moore to Kenyon Sadiq. So, 5-18, they certainly deserve their holy Wallawas this week. All right, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, the Midwest is officially in the rear view mirror. And it is time to look out that windshield with mountains and landscapes and oceans at these West Coast rivalries. This is going to be a really fun couple of weeks to finish off in this season. And you know I am laser focused on this huge game on Saturday between Oregon and USC. Now, I'm going to have a full preview, prediction, in-depth scouting report on the Cardinal and Gold later on during the week. But I want to give you a little bit of a sneak peek on how I feel about this game. There's one thing about this matchup that has slapped me right in the face, and that has said, Ted, this is the biggest key. This is probably the biggest advantage that Oregon has in this game. And if Oregon can take full advantage of this matchup, this is a game that the Ducks can maybe win by a couple of scores. I believe Oregon can win this game by 2 scores, maybe even 3 scores. I know that's probably pushing it a little bit. I do not believe USC has the personnel to be able to go into Autzen Stadium and win this game by 10 plus points. That one big key, that one thing that has slapped me in the face, physicality, and specifically physicality at the line of scrimmage. Both lines of scrimmage. I'm probably going to emphasize more on the offensive line for Oregon as opposed to defensive line. But let's dive into it right now, why don't we? I want to take a look at what have you done for me lately. What has happened the last 4 games as it pertains to Oregon running the football and USC defending the run. The Ducks are one of the best teams in all of college football pounding the rock over that period of time. They are over 1,000 yards alone during this last quattro of contests, averaging 264.5 yards per game. This is Chip Kelly level stuff right now. That's the type of production we're seeing from this Oregon team right now. During that same 4-game stretch, I know not everything is created equally, but we're talking about what have you done for me lately. During that stretch, USC has given up 807 yards on the ground, 201.7 yards per game. If I'm Will Stein coming out in this matchup, I am lining. I know this is a West Coast, Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12 classic matchup. But I am lining up at the line of scrimmage. I got some big old boys up front, and I've got some guys across the line of scrimmage for USC that have gotten pushed around a decent amount this season. I'm lining up at the line of scrimmage. I'm looking to the eyes of Lincoln Riley. I'm looking into the eyes of Danton Lynn. I'm looking into the eyes of the Cardinal and Gold, and I'd be like, we are going to dare you to stop this run game. We are going to line up. We're going to run the ball. We're going to line up. We're going to run it again. We're going to line up. We're going to run it again. We're going to run it again. We're going to run it again. And then when you have your resources committed, just when you think that you've got the run game contained, that's when we hit you with the play action. Maybe DeCorian Moore is healthy. Maybe Evan Stewart is healthy for this game. And maybe some of the weapons, which I believe that Dan Lanning has been playing it conservatively. Like, if I think like USC was the game last week, I believe DeCorian Moore would have played. I think there's going to be a lot of chips being pushed to the center of the table for Dan Lanning and this Oregon football team right now. And you know what's really interesting at the line of scrimmage and the advantages that the Ducks have right now? 2 of their best, I can say it conservatively, 2 of their best 5 offensive linemen or defensive linemen were USC Trojans last year. Emmanuel Pregnon was USC's best offensive lineman last season. He is Oregon's best offensive lineman this season. You know, I think his draft grade last year was maybe around like a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick, something like that. He has elevated himself into a 1st-round NFL draft pick. Iowa early in the game against USC, they were able to road grade pretty well. They were able to run the ball. They got away from it a little bit for whatever reason, but there's been a lot of teams that have been very successful, that have had good offensive lines up front, that have been able to do a pretty good job against USC in the run game. And I've got a feeling that Oregon is going to make that a priority with Noah Whittington, with Jordan Davison, with De'Air Hill as well. Now, I'm going to circle back to another USC Trojan that is on Oregon's roster this year that is making the trenches as good as there is in college football for this Ducks team. But I want to talk about the run game here for a minute. Because, you know, I'm not here to maybe talk ill of anybody. That's not what, especially guys that are injured. But the timing certainly matches up. When Jaden Lamar went down, and now you got more opportunities for Davison. You got more opportunities. Dayer Hill was already getting a good amount of opportunities, but you get the general idea. It's more maybe for Davison. Because they were putting Jaden Lamar in there in certain situations, and I was still like, I never really saw it with Lamar. And I've talked about that throughout the season. And I'm like, yeah, we need to get these young guys. We need to be able to get them a lot more reps because they're clearly the ones that are the more talented backs. And now, since Jaden Lamar has gone down, this Oregon rushing attack has raised to an all-new level. I just wanted to make sure that I threw that in there because it kind of blends in with the stat that I had to kick off this segment. But this Oregon offensive line is playing as good as anybody in college football right now. And I would expect this Oregon offensive staff to make that an emphasis, to make that a priority, to like look USC in the eye and be like, yeah, this isn't going to be your typical West Coast game. This is going to be a physical game. If you want to come into our house, you got to match our physicality up front. I'm going to say it right off the bat. I do not believe USC can match Oregon's physicality. I think USC can match the explosive playmaking ability. I mean, the Oregon corners are going to be tested a ton against Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, Jade Mayava throwing the football. There's no doubt about that. But when you talk about the run game, when you talk about longer drives, when you talk about longer possessions, when you talk about keeping USC and the thing that makes them great on the sidelines, that's an emphasis. That's a path to victory, no doubt, for the Oregon Ducks. Let's switch over to the other side of the football because I'll finish talking about offense. But Bear Alexander, the guy who, I mean, there's stories on both sides. There's two sides to every story. The guy that quit on USC last year, as some maybe on the other side have said, but he has come into Oregon this season and he has played his best football. No doubt about it. How ironic is it that the one thing that Oregon is probably going to emphasize the most, the trenches, the physicality, is built upon two former USC Trojans being a huge part of that. Bear, ever since the Penn State game, to me, that was his breakout performance in an Oregon uniform. You saw Tion Gray in the starting lineup. You kind of saw a little bit more of a rotation. Ever since then, he has been creating plays in the backfield. He has been clogging run lanes, and he has been doing it consistently. I remember after that Penn State game, I'm like, all right, is this just hey, it's a big game, Bear kind of playing up to the stage? Right? Is it that, and then maybe he drops back down? Or is he going to use this as a launching off point? That was the question following the big victory over the Nittany Lions in the whiteout. The answer to that question, as he has used it as rocket fuel, and it was clearly a launching point for the rest of the season. USC has had some success running the football with King Miller, with Amari Washington and Bear Alexander in the middle. Look, here's the thing, folks. Bear is going to be so damn motivated in this game, you have to believe. I think that's a factor that we need to talk about as this week progresses. That Bear is going to look at maybe some of the narratives that came out that I talked about just moments ago, some of the narratives that came out of Los Angeles in that game. Oh, Bear's a quitter. He doesn't give effort on every play. All of these things. You know what's probably going on in his mind is I'm going to eat these guys alive. Okay? There are going to be lots of Bear attacks reported on Saturday afternoon in Eugene, Oregon. You got to think that's what's being in the head right now of Bear Alexander this week. Physicality is the emphasis that needs to be going on in Eugene, Oregon this week, because that's the thing that can wear down USC. That's the thing that over a 60-minute game, if the Ducks continue to play the way they've been playing, this is a team that I think that can not only win, but win convincingly over this Lincoln Riley USC team. I want to finish on the offensive side of the football. You know, we talked about the run game and the physicality in the offensive side. I think one thing that's worked out really well, we saw it a lot against Minnesota, we've seen it at other parts during the season, is the play action game. When Oregon runs the ball and runs the ball and runs the ball ultra effectively, and I expect them to be good in the run game because that's all they've been against better run defenses, over the Wisconsin and Iowa being those really good run defenses that they've had really good rushing performances against. When they run it and they run it and they run it, that's when you open up the play action shot. That's when you open up a DeCorian Moore. We'll see if Stewart is able to go and some of these weapons and these speed down the field. USC's secondary has been, it's been a 6 or 7. Let's just put it that way this season. So I think there's a lot of matchups that can be opened up starting with the physicality up front. I think there's going to be some play action fakes off of a successful run game for Oregon. All right, if I keep on talking, I'm going to talk about every single matchup, but that's the one that needs to be focused on. That's the one that needs to be keyed on for Oregon to have a very successful day and for everybody to be not only shouting at the end of the third quarter, but shouting back to their cars, walking across the bridge over the Willamette River. All right, folks. This is what you've all been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for. Going to have some in-depth previews, predictions, scattered reports later on during the week. But until then, I'm Ted LaRue. This has been That Show Out West.